I mean, since trading for Jimmy Butler, you look at the numbers, and they're absolutely ridiculous. I mean, free throws made, that was one thing the Warriors weren't good at prior to Jimmy, and attempted. But those numbers going through the roof. You guys, again, I was telling you, I did that Warriors game just last week, and Steve Kerr was telling us before the game, because one thing you don't really appreciate sometimes about Jimmy Butler, but he does now that he has him, he does all these things that are so sound. They may not be spectacular, for the fantasy sometimes, but they are so sound. He's always in position. He's got that alpha dog mentality. He goes, man, he just lands on 2 feet. He's always doing the things that are just right and does them in a timely fashion for him.
He does. I mean, there's so much to talk about this trade, how it's impacted the Golden State Warriors. I mean, I'll start off with points in the paint. The Warriors didn't get points in the paint. I mean, if you look at it, they ran their offense and they get some back doors. They legitimately has a guy that if he has a guy on his back, now don't have to be a mismatch. He takes advantage of it. They didn't get to the free throw line where they could slow and get and have a team in a half-court situation. When you look at stats, GA and the Bill, he gets 26 and he's 5 of 8 from the field, and maybe only taking 1 or 2 threes. Anybody's gotten 10, 11 double-digit free throw attempts. I love that is he understands his game. I know where Jimmy's gonna get his buckets from. He's not one of these players that's like some of these young guys, they going to take step backs. They're going to do that. Jimmy Butler is elbow in, occasional three, but more importantly, he's going to take advantage if you make a mistake. And then he has the best players to play with as far as basketball IQ. There's some times where you watch guys with high basketball IQ. If I'm playing with GA and GA backs door and I miss him, it's over. But if I'm playing with GA and I throw it at the same time he's cutting, we're on the same page. But if GA cuts and then I'm throwing it, you miss that second. Jimmy Butler, more importantly, of all those things I've talked about, he gave a belief back to this Warriors team with Draymond and Steph. It was almost like a B12 shot. They are ready to go right now, the Golden State Warriors.
They have 2 guys on their team that are superstars in terms of their impact on the game, but not necessarily statistically. When you look at a Jimmy Butler's stat line, it doesn't say, oh, that's a superstar. Same thing with Draymond Green. But when you look at how they impact the game of basketball, it completely differentiates them, because those are 2 guys, they can blow up defenses or offenses better probably than anybody in the league because of their anticipatory skills, understanding of what you're trying to do offensively. And then on the offensive end, that duo probably have the highest collective IQ. I'd say trio, put Steph in there, of any trio in the entire league. And you have to have an IQ that's really high to maximize Steph Curry. There's a reason why Steph's level has risen, is because his greatest strength is not having the ball. He is the most dangerous player this game has ever seen without the basketball. And because he can play the entire court, if you don't have guys out there that are on the same wavelength that he is on, and that's what Smitty's talking about, you take away a big part of his talent. And so when you look at this Warriors team the last couple of years, they've been middling. They've been a middle-tier team, no real threat to have a chance to win it because they were average defensively and offensively. Now, Steph can play the way Steph played when they won championships. He doesn't have to be ball dominant. He's got another guy, Jimmy, who can go get 30 in a game, who you've got to guard. And then with Draymond, he kind of just stirs the pot. So that's why this team is legitimately dangerous. They got it defensively. They got their young guys playing at a really high level because they now understand their system. And then with Steph, anything's possible.
And Steve was saying this the other day, too, and he said one thing that people don't realize also is that when Jimmy came over, it stabilized their bench and their role players, because especially for the young guys, he said, if you remember at the beginning of the year, I'm playing 12, 13 guys. We're playing all these sorts of players, and again, all sorts of different minutes. They didn't have an established role. But when Jimmy got there, now they've gone down to 8, 9, 10 guys, depending on the night. And guys know I'm going to get my minutes no matter what, and they have a defined role.
Well, as a coach, you look down and say, I need this, I need that. So GA, as he coaching, I'm the assistant coach, I'm saying, GA, we need this. And Steve Kerr's looking down, which one? With Jimmy, he checks about 9 of those boxes. Yeah. So that means now I don't have to have that many people in rotation. That is a luxury for a coach. I also say is people are always thinking about coaching. Coaching is done before we get to the court if you have an experienced team. We're talking about all this. Once we get in the game, the guys with high basketball IQ and talent, they figure it out. Jimmy's one of those guys, you could just coach him before the game. Throughout the game, if he makes a mistake, I don't have to talk to him about how he's going to correct it. He self-corrects because of his experience and his talent and his basketball IQ.
What about their size? Because they're not the biggest team out there in the West. Is that
Kevon Looney is the one key for me. How many Kevon Looney minutes they can play against bigger guys?
That's true. I would say this. There's two teams. There's really one team, and that would be Denver. Because size is relative to how it's used. In today's game, you don't have a lot of bigs. Şengün is like that, where you have to worry about their back to the basket, scoring. And this is where a guy like Draymond helps you. Because even with an advantage, you don't, for 40 minutes, have to double. You don't have to compromise your defense. Now, Draymond's not going to shut Jokic down. He's not going to shut Şengün down. But because of Looney, okay, he can buy me maybe 15 minutes of the game. And then with the way you play from a defensive standpoint, they just can't allow Jokic to make everybody else better, you know. And so they would figure out the size is not as big. You're seeing the same dynamic with the Lakers. The advantage you have now is, can your wings control the defensive backboard? You know, and that's what Jimmy and Draymond and those guys allow them to do. So, yeah, the size is a concern, but it's not the issue.
All right, taking a look at the East. This is the way the standings finished out. And you got Cleveland leading the way, picking up that first seed, Boston at number 2, New York 3. So we got Cleveland and Boston awaiting the play-in winners. New York's taking on Detroit in the first round. Indiana taking on Milwaukee. As far as the play-in is concerned, you got Orlando and Atlanta, Chicago and Miami. But let's start with the defending champions, the Boston Celtics, who over the last, 2 months or so, Smitty, have been playing some great basketball.
They have. I just love how they've managed this entire season. You know, when you have a Drew Holiday, a Derek White, and also a Jason Tatum, who played a lot of basketball. Then in the summertime, they went and obviously won the gold medal for us. You know, the way they've managed their minutes has been phenomenal. Al Horford, GA, to be able to hold down the fort at his age when they had to give some rest to Porzingis. So I love everything about the Boston Celtics. And great teams, what I love is what we were talking about in the last segment. I always say, can they win a game defensively? They can win a series defensively. Can they win a game when things just not going well? They've been through it. They're not going to shrink like we talked about it. And then I think right now, before that, we all used to say, nothing against his coaching. Has he been through it? Not, the coaching staff has been through everything right now, and now I'm on board with them. I look at them as, do they have a bench? The bench has been through it. Do they have size? They have everything. Now, could they not win it because some teams can catch a fire against them? But other than injuries and maybe, everybody's talking about how Jaylen Brown will come back. That's the only thing I'm looking, but nothing. I don't see a weakness in them right now.
No, I mean, what's remarkable is after winning a championship, they come back the next year with all the adversity because they've had guys in and out of Atlanta. They won 60 games this year. Like, they still won 60. Kudos to Cleveland for winning 64 to this point, but they didn't really take a step back. But I think mentally they're going to come into this postseason, if healthy, refreshed. Their bench is a little bit better than it was. Peyton Pritchard, 6th Man of the Year candidate, he's been phenomenal. But they've just gotten timely contributions throughout the season. They know who they are and they know why they win. And they know it's proven because they won a championship. And we don't talk enough about it. They dominated last year. It wasn't even close throughout the entire postseason or the regular season. So this is not – they know who they are. I think they're actually, underrated in terms of what they can do. Having said all that, while I still think they are the favorite, it's going to be challenging, and we've got to wait and see what's going to happen with Jaylen Brown. We'll talk about that later, but that to me is going to be critical. Listen, there's nobody trying to win a championship that if you don't have one of your one or two best players – you can honestly feel like you can still accomplish that goal. So he's going to be critical.
What about Cleveland? Did they do enough in the regular season, again, winning all those games and dominating in the way that they did with all those winning streaks, multiple winning streaks? Did they do enough for you to believe in them in the playoffs?
Yes, for sure. I mean, the DeAndre Hunter, and I'm still saying, what in the world are the Hawks are doing? But take that aside.
Right.
The DeAndre Hunter, they acquired, because we didn't have to trade too much. They acquired DeAndre Hunter, and he's okay with coming off the bench. Like, he doesn't have an ego. He really relished in that same role with the Atlanta Hawks. Everybody had, can he be the second option? Can he do this? He came out this year and was fighting for that sixth man of the year, and he's taking that same role, and he's a two-way player, and he gives them some size. I worry a little bit about the backcourt, their size, but now you have a chance right now. I can just pull DeAndre Hunter and play him, Ty Jerome. They have enough size, even though they start two small guards.
Listen, I think this Cleveland team is infinitely better than they were a season ago. And part of it is because you talked about DeAndre Hunter. His versatility, he's like having two or three guys off your bench because of all the things he can do at a high level. He can play multiple positions. He can defend multiple positions. He can play with the ball, without the ball, and he can shoot it. And so to be able to plug and play him in a lineup that they have, I think it's going to be instrumental. Ty Jerome's been incredible. We talked about Peyton Pritchard. He's had a similar impact off their bench at that guard position. Again, he can play either position, which has been critical, and he's, again, another guy that shoots it. That's one of the issues they had a year ago. They didn't shoot it as well, and they weren't physically up to the task. Evan Mobley's a different guy this year. Much improved from where he was a season ago. And I think that along with the fact that Garland and Mitchell have figured it out in terms of how to play at a high level together. And I think this team is legit. They as good as Boston is, this team's going to have a chance. And I think the most important part is the psychological advantage they have now of knowing they can beat Boston. When they came back from that, was it 22-3 or 25-2 deficit in Boston in a big game and won that game, and Smitty will tell you, like, those are the seminal moments. It didn't affect Boston losing it, but it positively impacted Cleveland winning it. Now they believe, and belief's so important coming into the postseason. That record doesn't mean as much as the fact that they've gone toe-to-toe with all the top teams, so they know where they are, and they know who they are as well. So this Cleveland team, they're legit.
Give me an X factor.
Cleveland?
Anywhere.
Oh, mine is Evan Mobley for the Cavs because he's taken that leap up forward. He's gotten more experience, but I still want him at times. I want him to keep his motor high on the defense and offensive end. And people say offensively, you think scoring. I don't think scoring. I'm saying being active offensively. If you got a smaller guy, punish him. If GA threw it down to me, I don't have to score it. I got to make them double, and I got to get GA an easy shot. If I have a smaller guy, that's the one thing I want to see him. People think you got to score. I must get us a possession if I'm that skillful. And on the defensive end, he can affect the game from all three levels as we talk about offensively, defensively. So he's going to be the one guy. I cannot play a 6'6" guy on him, and he doesn't punish them, and he doesn't draw a double team, and he still gets his 20. No. I need him to get your 20, get him in foul trouble, and I got to get GA. If he averaged 18, GA got to average 20 now because he should get an extra point because they're going to have to double me.
Yeah, it's a great point that you make about Evan Mobley. Plus, he's physically tougher. He got pushed around and bullied last year. He just did. And I think he has matured physically and mentally a lot more. That's not going to happen. X factor for me is going to be Jaylen Brown. I just think, he's an all-NBA caliber player. He's the reigning NBA Finals MVP. And as good as this Boston team is, I think they can win a series without him. But I don't think there's a chance you're going to win a championship. And I made this comment earlier. You're just not going to take an all-NBA guy who's one of your two best players off that team and think you can then go and win a championship. I just don't think that's possible. So his health is going to be the huge X factor for me. Is he going to be able to play at that level that we saw him at last year? Because, again, it wasn't just – Smitty made the point. It wasn't just his offense. His defense was game-changing with the stuff that he could do on the floor, his ability to guard 94 feet, to be disruptive, to be active. And then he can also be every bit as impactful offensively when he didn't have the ball. Like like we talked about Garland and also Mitchell kind of figuring it out. He and Tatum have done that as well. Yep. They know how to play off of and with one another at a high level, and not having him fully healthy, I think, can create some problems for this Boston team.
Yeah, and Joe Mazzulla said he's got no concern. Jaylen Brown should be good to go for the playoffs. One other team that we should be watching out for in these playoffs?
Is this Eastern or West?
East.
East? My Detroit Pistons.
Okay.
I'm not saying they're going to win a championship, GA, but I think they can be spoilers of some of this team that's far ahead along of them, a la the New York Knicks. Yeah. They could win that series in the first round.
Fear the deer, baby. Fear the deer. 7 in a row. Giannis is playing like Jokic, except defending. I mean, he has been ridiculous at how well he's played. Kevin Porter Jr. is giving him a nice spark as well. Bobby Porter's back.
Yep.
And we got to find out if they get Dame Lillard back. But Giannis is wrecking the league right now. He really is. And he's got this team. They're like flying under the radar. But this team is priming to have a chance to make some noise in that Eastern Conference.
So the Bucks saying they're optimistic that Dame could be back at some point during the